and it's a major insurance company.
Hello, Lou Richardson. A March 21st, 2000 letter from the State Water Board to the Merced Irrigation District, which is the holder of 11395, clearly advised a simple administrative correction to the license would not be possible and a full petition for a POU change was necessary to add properties. A formal full petition provides adequate notice and an opportunity to be heard by all parties of interest in assurance that existing right holders are not harmed by a proposed change. The LDP CSD Board of Directors since 2014 has permitted the General Manager, Pete Campa, to misrepresent facts despite numerous common sense public challenges during monthly board meetings. Sadly, only a basic inquiry into existing and easily obtainable legitimate records would have clearly identified Campa's information as incorrect. However, the board chose to remain silent. I believe it is an absolute disgrace that our current GM treasurer and longtime California Special District Association board member, who also operates a special district management company, would stoop so low as to enlist the assistance of a new, only 3-month employed State Water Board geologist, fresh out of college, to assist in concealing Campa's continuing misrepresentations as to the legal place of use for Merced River water in this area. Mr. Feldhaus is not, if Mr. Feldhaus is not knowingly conspiring with Campa to violate the law and has indeed been tricked into unintentionally concealing wrongful acts of Campa's activities, I seriously wonder how that young man's family and friends might feel about Aaron jeopardizing his hard work, educational success, and perhaps even his new state employment on suspicious, self-serving information provided by a character like Pete Campa, who has repeatedly refused to answer even the simplest of questions regarding his LDP-CSD activities. Put on your thinking caps. If a POU change had occurred in 1993, as Campa claims, why wasn't this change mentioned in the flurry of correspondence in 2000 between the state, Merced Irrigation District, and the LDP-CSD regarding that proposed POU change, or any other letter or document in the last 25 years for that matter? Today's agenda packet lacks the POU resolution, just as Campa lacks any compassion for those he intentionally harms while pursuing his own special interest agenda with our public funds. How about the board finally asking the hard questions and performing the duties you were elected and or appointed to perform? Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on. Pete?
So, Mr. President, the majority of my report is going to be covered in the action items and other items of your agenda today. And so I apologize for the big thick packet of bills that wound up in the packet without explanation. These were intended to have at least some highlights and some updates, because the state legislature has been busy doing its magic, and if you follow California legislature, it's not always friendly to special districts, local government, California citizens, in my opinion, and other things that really can make our life difficult, where we spend the majority of our administrative time just keeping up with requirements. So there are a number of things that are of interest. This came from the California Special District Legislative Action Days that went on in May. I attended that and visited with several legislators and their staff about some concerns, some of them being the reemergence of redevelopment. Redevelopment was something that primarily was used in urban cities. The city of Sonora did use it. I'm not sure if in Mariposa they had much involvement with redevelopment, but it was a way that they were able to funnel some state money into local projects for primarily low-income housing and social services, those kind of things, but it also covered a portion of their administrative costs, which they really liked. They were abolished several years ago. Now they're re-emerging, and it really puts a strain on available resources and property taxes. We don't receive property taxes because we were formed after Prop 13. So it's not a huge impact on us, but it impacts districts in general throughout the state that do receive property taxes. There are bills related to forming entities that will operate defunct water systems that aren't close to other water systems. That's kind of an interesting one because there will be involvement of the various different agencies, public agencies in the county that get involved in this and sit on a board that oversee the operation of these defunct systems if they can't annex. Also, CSDA has got some a bill in there related to transparency and having all districts have a website, and that was the result of a commission recommendation that districts are still not apparent to people. So CSG has been working on that. Those are just a few of the items. I don't know if there was any review of this or any questions. The accessory dwelling stuff that keeps coming out is going to cause us some grief, just in that it's it's making it much easier for people to put a secondary dwelling on their property. For accessory dwelling, it might be what they used to call granny houses or whatever, but it's primarily because of the cost of housing and wanting to be able to have someone live with you and have their own space, but not have to be treated as a separate building for the purpose of the building permit. But it also affects the way that our connection fees are charged, and if they need a second water meter, or if they need a second connection to the system, if they need separate fire sprinklers or anything like that. And the state legislature is trying to make it easier and restrict our ability to be able to recover that. The biggest problem with secondary dwellings is people will get them permitted and then they'll rent them out, like to Airbnb, because there's not a lot of oversight by the county, and then all of a sudden you've got them occupied 7 days a week, and pretty high demands that we can't charge for, except for water consumption that doesn't affect that. So if there are no questions, I would prefer to get to the rest of my report in the packet, except for the fact that we've got that's not in the packet right now, is I've been working closely with the State Governor's Office of Emergency Services. They're going to be out on Wednesday or Thursday to take a look at the areas where we had the water mains get blown out during the flash flood. We've submitted an application to the state. We've got to get the resolutions on your agenda today, but wanted to let you know that that's been a lot of back and forth to schedule that and get all the documentation together and make sure we're prepared for that meeting. And again, the purpose of that is to recover 75% of our costs.
What were our costs? Do you have an estimate of what those costs were?
About $60,000 between the two, and with labor and everything.
Okay. And what about the other ones that still haven't, those are the only two. It has nothing to do with the roads or anything else getting them fixed up here?
No, the county will be submitting to the roads
Okay.
for any damage to the roads or culverts, so we need that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep going in. Randy?
Once again, mine's pretty straightforward, so I'll just give it right back to you guys if you guys have any questions or comments.
Okay, moving on to...
Question?
Yes, sir.
What was the water loss report for last month? It's not in the
I'll have
agenda.
that in the packet next time.
I'm sorry.
I'll have it in the packet next time.
Well, you know what it is. What is it?
I don't. I haven't put the numbers in.
That's convenient.
Okay, you know, if you on that,
Jeez, you guys?
if you want, if, you know, if it's not there, feel free to send in a request and we'll get it to you. You know the process and protocol.
Yeah, you know, I get this late on a Friday, it's kind of hard to do on a Saturday.
I follow you, I
I mean,
understand.
and then, you know, we've got other things that are handed out on the table that
Okay.
weren't included in the packet, so you had to read it when you were here. I mean, it seems like a Brown Act violation of notice.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item B. It's adoption of a resolution accepting the place of use boundaries for Merced Irrigation District Water Rights License 11395, based on the concurrence of the State Water Board Division of Water Rights. Okay?
It's on page
43 and 44. And then on our desk was the proposed resolution here, if I'm not mistaken, which is not numbered, and I put it in at the back of it. So that is the proposed resolution right there.
Is it different from the one in the board?
Pardon me?
Should that not have been in the packet?
Is it different from the one in the board?
I didn't see one, if I'm not,
There's not a resolution that was in the board packet that was prepared on Friday. This was prepared after that and distributed after that.
Well, then it didn't
So
meet that
the,
notice.
the item was placed on the agenda just because it came in just right in advance of the finalization of the agenda, and the fact that this is something that I've committed to the state to get back with them and to put this issue to rest for all of our purposes. And so you're right, there are 4 documents associated with this. The first 2 were in the first packet. You'll see just the email response from the state, very, very simple response from them. And then on page 44 is, this does have the names of the customers. And that doesn't have their consumption because that wasn't the subject of this discussion. It was primarily the customer and the assessor's parcel number that's important for the purpose of the reporting. And then what we have to do with regard to compliance with MID's permit is to be able to show that we have adequate alternate water supply for those 32 parcels. Okay. So there were a couple things that the other items that were distributed were the map, and that is what's referenced in the resolution. The resolution basically just ties the documentation together and tells you why we're taking this action. The board is not required to take action on this. The reason that I put it on your agenda is so that there's documentation going forward. This action was considered by the board, so that there's not just something floating around that doesn't have the board's action associated with it. Okay, so that's why, and resolutions are much easier to be able to track in the future than our minutes of the meetings, because as you can imagine, going through minutes of the meetings to determine when something was considered by the board sometimes can take a lot of time if you don't know exactly the meeting date. But the resolutions are listed, every resolution has a title, and it's in a binder that shows that it was adopted in a year. So going through the, first off, the email from the state, the state has reviewed the documentation that was submitted, the documentation being the parcel data from Parcel Quest, from County LAFCO, which is the Local Agency Formation Commission. That's referenced in the resolution. That's the statutory boundaries, that's the legal boundaries of the district. And then, so there was according to the state in their letter to us last year, there was a conflict between the boundaries. They had that map included that had multiple different lines on it as far as boundaries. So they were provided the LAFCO boundary, they were provided the place of use boundary that was prepared by MBK engineers for Merced Irrigation District. The last time it went before the State Water Board. And that, the LAFCO information had both the district boundaries and the sphere of influence boundaries, okay? Not that that means a whole lot to this discussion, but the second item was that the last sentence of item number 1 from the state. Do you remember there was a discrepancy? There were some statements made by the state that there was a new connection added outside the place of use, and they're responding back that they don't have anything to substantiate that. They found that the number of parcels outside did not change between from 34 to 35 from 2013 to 2015, as indicated in the notice violation. So that was just an erroneous statement on their part. So the other item that they resolved internally was related to the South Shore Club and its boundaries. And the shape file, when they reference a shape file, that's just a digital file of what was the paper file, the map file. They have a shape file is what they open up in the GIS programs to be able to read the map. So, going through the resolution, and I'm not going to read every word of it, I'd like to just give you a summary of each of the findings. That the district is formed by Government Code 61,000. The next one is that the district is authorized to provide water service within its boundaries, and the boundaries are the statutory boundaries that are established by LAFCO. And the next whereas is that we've entered into agreement with Merced Irrigation District for water supply to Lake McClure. Merced Irrigation District has to go through a state process to determine where that water is going to be used. And that is what the next statement is, that in accordance with that water right license, the State Water Board has basically said, here's a place of use that we allow you to serve that water supply. On September 28th of 17, we were issued a notice of violation after several months of evaluation that the state did. And the notice of violation stated some things that we had to provide. We had to reconcile the maps. That was one of the main things in order to be able to provide them an accurate place of use report. So we contracted for the preparation of digital maps. In other words, for the preparation of the shape files from maps that did not have those. Those were prepared and distributed to the state. State Water Board approved the place of use boundaries when compared to the district water service area, and revealed that 32 parcels were provided water service by the district, which are outside the place of use. Okay, so those 32 parcels that are listed on that attachment are the ones that are going to be reported on. And if there are ever any additional connections in the future outside the place of use, they have to go onto that list, and there has to be a source of supply for that. So the district adopted a compliance plan. We did a compliance plan that talked about how we're going to make sure in the future that we don't run short on groundwater supply, to make sure that we have adequate groundwater supply to serve those 32 parcels. Looking back at the reports, there are times where you can see where somebody had a leak and their consumption spiked up at exactly the same time that, for whatever reason, the well production was down, which puts us in the past, it puts us really close to not being in compliance with this requirement. So the purpose of the compliance plan was to state that we had adequate water supply going forward to deal with those well failures, to deal with spikes in consumption, and those types of things. And so I still have to submit a revised place of use report back to the state based on those 32 parcels. So some will come off the report, from the report we had before, and some come back, some come on that had not been reported before.
They're also asking for a change in consumption for your, a request for a revised monthly consumption reports. And I just was wondering, why would they ask for that if we have less than what we originally said we had?
We have less, it's not the number of parcels, it's the total consumption. They need to compare during those periods of time, the total consumption from the properties outside the place of use to the total production of groundwater during that time, to make sure that we met those requirements. Okay, and so, because what has been submitted to them before and what they've analyzed contains some parcels that have been determined to be inside the place of use and did not have those other ones that are outside, then we've got to reconcile that and get that to them.
Before the state issue came up, I got a little cranky, I got a little red face, I got as mad as anybody you guys ever seen me be, so, about not having a foundational map. And am I correct to assume that at this point, we now have maps that satisfy all the players? MID's happy, LAFCO's happy, the state is happy, everybody's happy except him. So, I have my foundational maps and documents now, is that correct?
You do?
With this letter, the state accepts it.
Yes.
It's gospel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna go to the public now for comment. Thank you for the explanation and the details. So with that, I'll go to the public for comments.
You bet. I gotta tell you, I admire you for your tenacity in holding on to a sinking ship. I talked to one of the supervisors at the Swrcb this morning, and he was quite interested in some of the information that they put in that they were totally unaware of. Now, if you look at this map that's been offered as our $35,000 product of the true and accurate POU, you will notice that nowhere on the page does it even mention the water license. This is a bogus map. It is, does not reflect the true POU. The shape file that you, I'm sorry, I'm talking to you. The shape file that General Manager Campa provided the Department of Water Resources was from the Water Order 93-2. It was a conditional approval of the South Shore Club project for 2,010 acres for 772 acre feet a year if they met certain requirements, which they did not. All the permits have expired and the project has been abandoned. Yet campus says, oh, this proves the POU has changed. When I explained that to the supervisor this morning, I think he was rather interested that our general manager has the power to change a POU of a water license without a full-blown petition hearing before the state water board. This is ludicrous. Let's see, yeah, $35,000 for a piece of garbage. Nowhere is $395 mentioned on it. Let's see, it's hard to read my notes here. You refer in the agenda that there's an attachment, but there's no attachment. You say refer to Exhibit A, and there is no Exhibit A. This is all typical GM foolery. And I think you should take a very serious look at this, because if you read that letter from Feldhaus, like I said, I was shocked to find out he'd only been there for 3 months. He's just out of college. Poor kid doesn't know what the heck he's doing. And he had a real professional working over him. And as you can see, he says right here in the first paragraph, the first paragraph, he says, through my own analysis and Campa's response, he agrees with Campa. Well, that was Campa's response, of course. And then they say, well, we're going to accept Campa's response. The State Water Board did not accept this. A 3-month employee who doesn't know what he's doing accepted it. And like I said, if you had that shape file and put it on another map and laid it over, you'd say, every single one of you would agree, you betcha that matches. The shape file, though, was never approved. It was provisional, based on, and you know that, but you have to stick to this because you've committed a course, and the GM committed a course, and he has to remain on it. And he's bringing a lot of people down with him who are innocent and should not be subjected to this. And Feldhaus is one of them. That man worked very hard for his college degrees and stuff, and to be used like this is reprehensible. So the map is not identified. It doesn't even mention the water license. And if you read what the state requested, I don't see how this fulfills it. Nowhere on this map does it show 11-395 place of use. It's titled Merced Irrigation District Place of Use, but if you would take the time to do what I've been suggesting for, gosh, coming up on 2 years, it's not difficult. You walk over here and you go, does this match with this? And you go, oh, absolutely not, it does not. And yet this is what the California State Water Board told the board in their notice of violation is the correct POU. Your general manager is continuing to pull a big scam on you. And you approve this resolution, you are involved in it. I'm going to be having a lot more conversations with the gentleman up in Sacramento. He is very interested in what's going on down here because they were totally unaware of it. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment too. Most of the complaints that I have not paralleled Lou's basic interests. I'm primarily interested in, let's get this place cleaned up and go forward. However, in order to do that, we do have to have a common maps. We have to know who our customers are. We have to know whether there's a limit on what we can charge the people. There's things that we do have to know without a doubt. And there's more than one person that's involved, or more than one organization. I agree with Russ. Back in 2008, I went to the LAFCO and tried to do the same thing that you're talking about. Give me one set of maps and things so I can look at these things. But there hasn't been any of this stuff that we're talking about. Everything has gone through a Pete, and there's no question in my mind. Pete's integrity, it could be questioned for sure. No, wait, I'm not going to do that.
I want you to stick to the map because
I'm going to.
All right.
There is no place that I have seen any of this stuff laid out where I have seen SWRB, State Water Board signature, where I've seen MID signature, where I've seen FERC signature, where I've seen our signature, and if I'm not mistaken, the 63,000 codes, when we get into major things like this, it's very possible that it requires a vote of the people if we're going to make these changes. And instead, what we do, we just continue to kind of dance around these things. And it's been going on, like I say, I know going all the way back to 2008, when I was sitting up here doing the same thing, dancing, and never did understand this, and I still don't understand this. However, if I look at this, and I look at this map, and I didn't see this map until this morning, just put in the package this morning. I mean, I'm looking at that huge South Shore thing back in here again. And I just mentioned about the planning, we're talking about, hey, there's not going to be any growth. We should be managing for growth. And I look at that great big animal out there. And I said, my God, that would take a whole new organization, twice as, 3, 4 times maybe. And we don't have that water. And that's the farthest point of what we were capable of doing. I mean, there are so many issues that are involved in this. It would be so important to get it everybody on the same page, but we can't do it by trying to get a piece here, a piece there, a piece here, a piece there.
Mr. President, just real quick, I'd like to reiterate something. And, you know, I know we're on an adversarial sort of thing here, and that's regrettable, because I don't hold animosity against any of you, even our general manager. He's doing what he's been trained to do. He's doing the way he was raised. I mean, that's his job.
What did you comment?
My comment is simply this. You have a duty to the customers of this subdivision. You have a duty to do your job and to do it as best you can. And all I'm asking you to do is, you read the notice of violation by the state. They told you the POU is the subdivision. It's in black and white. There's no question about it. Why don't each of you just walk over there and look at that map and compare it to the garbage that is, well, it wasn't even in the agenda, which is another thing. I think that's a Brown Act violation, when you spring new information on people on the day of the meeting, and they didn't have the proper notice to study it. I think that is a Brown Act violation. Simply go over there, take a recess, and go over there and take this ridiculous piece of garbage and hold it up. And look at what the state of California has already told this board is the true place of use under 11.395. And you will see what I've been saying for coming up on 2 years now is absolutely correct. Now, our general manager doesn't want to accept it because he has all sorts of business out there he set up 20 years ago when he was here the first time. Setting up all those LAFCO annexations. What you've got to ask yourself, why would LAFCO approve annexations when we could not possibly legally supply the water? Well, the obvious question is, they were going to force us into a groundwater substitution program. Nobody here wanted it, nobody here would vote for it. So it surreptitiously slipped in the very beginnings when this district was formed in 1980. The first board were special interests trying to expand water out, and that's the first thing they did. More extensions, more pipe, more extensions, further out, all knowing that it was in violation of the license that gives us our life water.
Mm-hmm.
All for speculators and land developers that want to build elsewhere. They didn't want to live in our subdivision, they didn't want the rules, the CC&Rs, another board, they didn't want annual assessments, they wanted free land, we want nothing to do with you. Oh, but we do want to steal your water. And our general manager has been devoted to that premise ever since. And if you don't believe me, all I'm saying is take a look at the map. The state board has already told this board. How are you going to, rationalize if you approve this resolution? And I've got this tape here asking you all to please just go look and see what the state said and see what they said is correct and what I'm saying is correct. Okay. You approve this resolution, it seems to me you're doing it with the knowledge that it's incorrect and you're committing a crime. Thank you.
No.
I understand what you're saying, and it makes sense. You're trying to do good for the community.
Yeah.
But hear my side.
No,
All I'm representing right now is what the state of California has already told you.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is walk over there and confirm it on a map on your own wall.
Okay.
And then ask your general manager, why is there this discrepancy when the state board has already told us what the POU is? And compel him to provide the answers you haven't done since 2014. He won't answer unless you make him answer. And none of you stand up and say, you know what, this doesn't make sense. Explain to me why it doesn't say that this is the map of the POU under Merced Irrigation's district license 11395.
Okay.
I'll tell you why, because it's not. And by approving that, I think you're making a grave error. You're making fraud.
I want to just make a trying to, I'll say, move the district. You might not agree with how we're doing it. and I apologize, or I shouldn't even have to apologize, we're doing the best we can, but we do take what you say seriously. Will you guys come to us, just talk to us, don't beat us up.
I'm not beating you
No.
up. I'm asking you, I'm begging you.
I know.
To just get up and walk over there and look at the map.
Okay.
And explain to me how you
Okay,
can say that is a good map.
You know, my opinion is this, I want a foundational document. And I honestly don't care if it's this one, that one, I don't care. I want a foundational document. This is where we are, this is what we have to work with, this is what we go for. That's all I want. It doesn't make any difference to, I don't think most of us, what actually is on the map. Just give me a solid map.
So you don't care about the truth?
There's nobody making any fortunes in Don Pedro.
So you don't care
If you
about
don't
the
sell
truth?
beer, you're not making any money, so.
You don't care
what
about
can
the
I
truth
say?
then is what you're saying.
No.
No,
You said you don't care, either map, I don't
I
care.
think-
One's right, one's wrong.
Luke,
And you
stop.
don't care?
I just want a foundation.
Okay, public has had its comments, I'm gonna pull it over to the board for their comments. I'm gonna start with we have a hard enough time serving what we have connected today.
Agreed.
So let's not complicate the issue or throw that bullshit up in these meetings. That's where I'm frustrated. So,
I'm frustrated that the board members don't stand up and hold the general manager accountable for the things he says that are incorrect.
okay, no more comments, no more. This is-
I've been trying for
No,
15
And I
minutes.
told you 10 minutes ago, this is board time, and we're still on board time. So
Will you give me a chance after board time?
after we're done.
Okay, thank you,
I
that's
think you've
all.
already gave him enough.
I think it's
That's-
my-
You just don't wanna know the truth, do you?
No, I think you're wrong. So
You prefer to live in ignorance.
Lou, that's your second warning.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna go then.
Okay,
You won't have to ask me to leave.
okay. Let's take a 5-minute break, then we can let Jim pack up his stuff.
Yeah, because I'm going home and I'm calling the SWRCB and telling them exactly what you folks are doing here. You refuse to look at what they told you was the correct POU, and you're trying to increase our charges even more. Go to the attorney, go to these consultants. And that, he loves that. That's just more work for him and more money. You're not doing your jobs,
So are we
pal.
on break? right
Yeah,
now?
we're breaking
Yeah,
at
we're break.
2:37.
For break.
I gotta use
Okay.
Yeah, you should.
And all you have to do is look at the map, and you refuse to do that for 2 years now. For 2 years, you refuse to go to MID and say, give us your POU map. I asked him, I got one in 1 day.
Oh.
And see, you don't want to know the truth because you'd rather follow Pete Campa, special interest. And if you don't have a special interest, I don't know why you support this
it.
guy.
I'm gonna go to the office and use that.